Welcome back, everybody. It's a beautiful morning in Nebraska, a great day to carve. Got my yard work done, so I'm ready to roll. And this will be session 4 of carving a hen Greater Scaup. And in the previous sessions, if you missed those, you might want to look back on them. We got the head carved, the body carved. In this session, I'm going to hollow out the decoy, assemble everything, including the keel, get it weighted, and get the flotation correct. And then that should finish up the carving of this decoy. I hope it's been helpful. And if it has, please consider hitting the subscribe button. That does help me out as I continue to build this channel with free resources for people that might want to carve decoys or are carving decoys or wildfowl in general. Something I really enjoy. So let's get going. First thing I want to do is just give myself a little pencil guideline. I try to split the decoy under any carving so I don't have to piece things back together. And I'm going to leave about 3/4 of an inch down here and leave that bottom board solid. That leaves a little weight in the bottom of the decoy, and I don't have to do any hollowing there. And I'm going to carefully split this on the bandsaw, so let's go over there and get that done. All right, I like to use a block rather than freehand, holding the decoy as I push it through the bandsaw blade, because the bandsaw blade is pulling down and it's going to want to pull it out of my hands. I don't like that. So to do this safely, I've got this fancy block with instructions. Block for splitting decoys, save toward blade, okay? So I don't forget. Enough bad humor for one day. I'm going to very slowly push this through and split the decoy. Let's get that done.
Notice I have my hands on the other side of the block and on the top of the bird, so my hands are nowhere close to the blade as I go through this slow cut.
All right, we've got the decoy split. And I try to shoot for about 1/2 inch. Just use my finger here as a gauge to help me strike a line around the decoy. And then we're going to use the Forstner bit to hollow this out. I also have the scrap piece that I cut off of the top of the decoy, and I mentioned it was going to make a nice nest for this process, because I can use that on the drill press table, and this keeps the decoy level, nice and square, while I work to hollow it out. Somebody suggested, hey Tom, could you use bean bags or something else? If you don't have that scrap piece, and whatever works, you just need some stability as I'm pressing that Forstner in. We don't want this thing rocking around. Just a word of caution on the Forstner bit. You have to keep your hands away from that. Those of you that are seasoned carvers know that, but I'm going to include it here for those that are newer and maybe trying this for the first time. That's a nasty, powerful machine, so I want to keep my hands away from it in case it snags or jumps or something. I don't want to be getting my fingers anywhere close to that. So enough on the caution. I'm going to start with a 1-inch Forstner, go around the perimeter. And this is kind of an eyeball process. We obviously don't want to punch through and go too deep. So I'm going to be a little cautious, but we'll go around the perimeter first. And I'm looking from the side as I'm using the Forstner and just kind of gauging how deep I need to go to get where I need to be without punching through. I have punched through before. It's not a killer. You can go back with some Bondo, but nobody wants to do that, obviously, if you don't have to. Get about halfway around, I'm going to get rid of the chips. Hold on back here and go from this direction. Okay, and I'm going to repeat that process all around the perimeter and then be back. All right, now I'm going to take a second pass, move in 1 inch, and go a little deeper. So I'll take that around again, just being careful and watching that I don't punch through. Third pass, and I'll go a little bit deeper in the middle. All right, I've got those with the 1 inch first pass done, kind of using my fingers to gauge how much wood I have left and where I need to take wood out. Now I'm switching to an 1.5 inch Forstner, and I'm going to use it to kind of clean out some of this. And again, be very careful with this, because when that blade hits an edge like that, it has a tendency to snag. And so again, I'm repeating myself, but keep your hands out away from that. So I'll go around the decoy and clean it up like that with the 1.5 inch blade. Just a quick look at that. Using my fingers again, and I think that's about as thin as I want to make it. Now I'll use a little rough sandpaper just to knock any loose stuff off the inside. And we can get the decoy reassembled. All right, now I'm going to use some wire brads and put those in about 3 different locations. Just pound them part of the way in because we don't want them to punch through. We're going to use these as locators for the halves as they're pressed back together, and I'm going to use my side cutters and just nip off the top of each one of those, so there's just a little bit left to press into. And then I had put some registration marks on the half here, on each half or each piece, so that I could line them back up. And once I get them aligned, I'm going to press them in place. And those brads serve as locators, because when I get glue on both halves and try to press them together, there's a tendency for the pieces to slide around, and this way they should be positively located. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to get my DevCon 2-part epoxy and apply it to both surfaces. And then I use electrician's tape to hold the two sections together. There are a lot of different ways you can do that. But I'll get the glue mixed up, the epoxy, and then be back. Okay, I've got my epoxy mixed up, and I'm going to use an old paintbrush handle to apply that to both sides. I want to make sure we have good coating on each surface so there are no air gaps. And the brads, I think, also add a little strength, along with being locators for the two pieces. Okay, I'll apply the glue to the other half, and then we'll put these together. All right, and put the pieces together. Get them lined up and pressed in place. And then I'm going to use my electrician's tape just to put some clamping pressure on this. And then I'm going to go around and wipe off the excess glue or epoxy, so I don't have to fight that later with the grinding equipment. Okay, we'll let that set. And along with the electrician's tape, I just like to add a can of lead, so we have a nice heavy weight pressing the two sections together while that epoxy cures. Now I want to work to get the head set in place, and the back of the neck is going to tuck into the cape here, so I'm going to need to remove some material back here, and I want a slight turn to the left like this. So I'm going to go in with carving equipment and kind of create a shelf to match this neck profile and get that set in about that attitude.
All right, I'm going to use my 1/4-inch cylindrical burr and use it kind of like an end mill here, and just begin to remove material. This is real-time speed right now, and I'll speed this up a little bit after we watch a little bit. But I'm basically taking that, the neck is in the back of the head are going to tuck into that cape, so I need to relieve that area. And then I want to keep in mind this head is on an angle and I want it to be level when I'm done. So I need to, I've given myself some marks there. You can see on the front of the breast the angle of the head from the center line back. And I'm going to keep that in mind as I'm making this relatively flat surface pocket for the head and neck to tuck into. Just removing material and trying to make that. I cut the original body round in that area, so we need to flatten it out to kind of match the profile of the bottom of the head and neck cut out. And this is an iterative process, so I'm going to use my pattern here. And I'm using the pattern just because it's a little easier to see how it's matching up with what I've done so far. And once I get a little farther along, I'll start using the head to see how it fits into this pocket. Now I'm going to speed the video up here a little bit so we can get through this quicker. Okay, this is 2x speed. I'm checking the fit again. Now I'm going to start using the head. It's a little too tight, so I need to open up areas, and I'll use my pencil to kind of pencil where I need to remove additional wood. As I'm going, you can see I still have quite a gap there, so I've got work to do to make this fit. And I want to rock the head back a little farther than I've got it here, so I'm going to take more material out on the cape. I'll go through that process, get this head fit in place, but that should give you enough to see what I'm doing. Got that set at the angle that I'm looking for, and now I want to look at the vertical, and it looks like that lines up very well. There's one more detail I want to carve in before I mount the head, and that is the sections of the breast. And with that head pulled back, sometimes you'll see a little bit of a separation in the center of the breast. Just want to put that detail in. This is at 2x speed, and I'm going to use that 1/4" cylindrical burr just to cut a groove following my pencil lines in both directions, kind of that Y shape, and then remove material down in this section that's lower between the halves of the breast, and then round each half as it comes into that crease. So this will take some work. Normally, by the way, I carve this before I split the decoy, but I forgot to do that in this case. So I'd rather not be going through this glue joint doing this work, but I've got enough material there that it's not going to be a problem. You just may want to, if you're going to carve this in, do it before you split the decoy normally. You can see the grain is popping out there a little bit, so I'll have to do some sanding. And I'm going to use my 1/2" sanding drum here and do the rough sanding and just smooth everything out. Then I'll do some hand sanding to finish things off. I've got to do a little more hand sanding on that, but I'll give you a picture of that. Just kind of very gentle separation there on the front. I'll mix up some more 2-part epoxy. And we'll get the head set. Make sure we have a good amount of epoxy in there. This epoxy sets up even quicker in the summertime, it seems, so you have to work pretty quickly. I'm going to want to check that vertical again over here. Some minor adjustments. So final check. Everything looks good. I'll let that set up. Then we'll do a little Bondo. Now I'm just doing a quick skim coat with the Bondo over the joint between the upper and lower section. And I sanded that and removed excess glue or epoxy with a knife and then sanded. And now I just want a very thin coating over that joint to help disguise the joint so it doesn't show up through the paint. Got to work fast, so I'll be back. All right, I've got the Bondo on the seam and the neck. Not very pretty at this point, but I just want to make sure I got enough material around the neck and the body joint so that I can take that off and have a nice smooth transition between all parts of the decoy. This will be at 2x speed, and I'm using a little bullet-shaped burr here to very lightly go over that Bondo and just remove material. And the burr doesn't load up with the Bondo like a sanding ruby bit would. So I like to use this to rough shape things, and then I'll go back and do some finish sanding. But I'll go around all of the Bondo areas with this first, and then come back and hand sand. Just a quick close-up after the sanding. Looks a lot better smoothed out.
All right, everybody, that's a good place to stop session 4. I thought I'd be done with the decoy in session 4, but I don't want these videos to get too long. So next time in session 5, we'll get everything sealed up. I can go through the keel balancing and flotation and give that the time it needs to really talk about that. And then we'll finish up the bird next time. Until then, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you.